Chair, the webinar is now live.
Hey, welcome everyone to the Wednesday, January 7th meeting of the Police Accountability Board. To access the meeting remotely, join from the map that you see, iPad, iPhone, or Android device, and the URL in the packet. If you don't wish your name to appear on the screen, use the drop-down menu. Click on your name to rename yourself to be anonymous. To request to speak, use the raise hand icon on the screen. Join by phone, enter the phone number and meeting ID in the packet. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press star 9 and wait to be recognized. Simply because my voice is not doing well, I'm just going to acknowledge the land acknowledgement in the packet and then go to our agenda, item number 1.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, this meeting was called to order at 6:30 p.m. I will now proceed to roll call. Chair Cayetano.
Here.
Vice Chair Wilson is currently absent. Board Member Calavita.
Here.
Board Member Lutwich.
Here.
Board Member Bellwood.
Here.
And Board Member Wells will be absent, is absent on leave of absence. Chair, we have a quorum. I will note because we have a leave of absence, that brings the quorum number to take action to 3. As it's 5 members are being used to calculate that. On behalf of the ODPA, we have Director Aguilar, David Alice Medina, Investigator Weinberg, and myself, Paul Scansfilio. On behalf of the BPD, we have Lieutenant Coates, as well as, let's see. I don't see the chief or deputy chief as.
So the chief and deputy chief send our apologies, they're able to attend tonight.
Thank you, Lieutenant Coates. And with that, Chair, that concludes all of the board.
Thank you. So will you be presenting anything or?
Yeah, I have just a couple quick messages.
Okay, let's go to agenda item 2 then. Approval of the agenda. Are there any revisions?
I move that we approve the agenda.
My second.
Are there any objections to the motion to approve the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, the motion is carried. We'll now proceed to public comment, Chair.
Yeah, did you
Yes. As a reminder, speakers are generally allotted up to 3 minutes, but may be allotted less time if there are many speakers. They may comment on any matter within the board's jurisdiction at this time, except confidential personnel matters. With that said, I'll start with those physically present first, and then I'll move on to our virtual attendees. Okay, and then just one moment, like at the time of phones. And the time is up.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners, and for your work. I'm here, my name is Andrew Pritchett, I'm with Berkeley PAB. I'm here tonight for a couple of reasons. One is because in June, I filed 2 complaints related to a guy named Draco who was beaten by police, but also there was a policy complaint about the right to record. Now, I know that I have a constitutional right to record. That was not the question. The question is, how was BPD being trained? Did what happened on June 4th, did the restriction of mine and others' rights to observe and to record, even just simply to observe, was it violated as a matter of policy and a practice that has been implemented by BPD leadership? That's what happened that day. So I don't really I looked at your agenda and it's like the policy thing. It's not like how to record or the public's right to record. We know we have that. The question is, how is BPD being trained? And I don't understand why it's 6 months later and I haven't heard a thing. I also want to comment on the other part, the misconduct portion. I understand that there's a lawsuit, there are efforts to get BPD to produce information related to that case. That should not be a problem. But I tell you this, I and people at Copwatch, we are waiting up to a year to get a simple police report. The most basic documents The most basic access to documentation is being denied to us by this police department. And as you consider tear gas, as you consider whether or not to recommend that BPD, that the city should reverse its policy, I want to caution you. Because in 2014, during the Black Lives Matter protests, and I want to encourage you in your review to go back and look at documents related to that incident. We got tear gassed up and down Telegraph Avenue. And I believe it was December 6, 2014. We were tear gassed to the extent that BPD and the other agencies that attended, they exhausted their arsenal of tear gas. There was such a fog that was created by that tear gas. They were shooting rubber bullets, munitions, and so forth indiscriminately. There was an investigation afterwards. And I really want to encourage you to look at that because they did not keep an inventory of what they used that night. They were unable to say how many canisters of tear gas were used. They were unwilling to produce information related to all of that. So I will.
That was your time. So.
Okay, that's all time. That's not just all time. All right. Let me just say this, that if they can't, and if they're not willing to produce documentation, please don't give them another thing to use against them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other member of the public physically present, I'll now move on to our attendees. I will now start with Jan Schroeder. You've been granted permission to speak. One moment while I get the timer up on the screen for you. Okay.
Hello. First, I want to sincerely thank the PAB for your work. And I want you to know that I am very strongly opposed to the BPD rewriting the use of force policy and thus weakening it in several ways. I'm also totally opposed to Councilmember Kesarwani's proposed City Council resolution to amend Council's 2020 direction and reinstate BPD's use of tear gas, smoke, and pepper spray. I look to you to protect the members of the Berkeley community and to really, really use any power you have to oppose these 2 points. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll now go on to our next speaker, Nikki.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Mickey Duxbury and I work with the Stop Deaths and Harm in our county jail. I have to say just personally, as I'm sure we're all affected, it's a horrific day to even be having this conversation when someone's been killed on the streets of Minneapolis. And I think we could foresee the likelihood that if these policies continue by this administration, there will be mass protests in and around the Bay Area and the East Bay. This is not the time to increase the police capacity to use weaponry that you wisely supported by limiting their use back in 2020. So I echo what the previous speaker said about the specifics about tear gas and other munitions, but my heart wants to be heard that this situation will keep escalating. And for any of you that have ever been involved in any massive protests, it takes nothing to escalate a few people to start to behave with their righteous rage and anger in a violent way when police are targeting them with, pepper spray and, pepper balls and increased tear gas. So what I want is for the police to be more adequately trained in de-escalation techniques, in working with every officer and working in conjunction with the city for us to get really prepared with leaders of all sectors of our community about how to train us to be involved in nonviolent civil disobedience for what is to come. So we don't have to rely on the police just having more force in their hands. That's never going to be the answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, up next, we have George Lippman. One moment while I get the timer up for you. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I want to speak mainly about the chemical weapons, but if I have time, the use of force, I'll do what I can to keep it under 3 minutes. First, on the chemical weapons proposal, I was struck by the council member's rationale in which he says in December 2014, the department used tear gas during a large-scale riot in Berkeley. Now, Andrew's covered some of this ground, but I'll say from my perspective, I was appointed to the PRC, Police Review Commission, the next month, January 2015, and the commission immediately embarked on a thorough review of police treatment of the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. I think this effort was one of the finest moments of the PRC in my 4 years of service. It clarified that the events were closer to a police riot in response to an overwhelmingly peaceful demonstration. It became clear that the improper treatment of a peaceful march created tremendous tension that escalated into uncontrolled baton strikes, massive amounts of CS gas. I don't call it tear gas, it's actually CS that deployed, and a tactic they called get 'em running, which Andrew referred to drive the whole march from Bancroft down Telegraph all the way into Oakland, where the mess they created was dumped into the hands of the OPD. This is history documented by your predecessor commission. It's troubling that the council member's proposal rests on a denial of memory. Coming to the usage of CS, the council member does not mention that the department fired an estimated 50 cans of CS at demonstrators, almost enough to deplete their supplies. Findings by the PRC included this: the combination of repeated CS gas exposure, along with a lengthy walk, it was extremely impactful, and there were reports of people suffering physical and emotional injuries as a result. Please do not give your approval to a proposal that is based on the misreading of history. Um, I also want to reflect on Mickey's comment on the killing of the young woman in Minneapolis by ICE today. If you watch the terrifying video, you can see that the agents made a snap decision to take a life. And people are human. You know, maybe they really believe that it's fine to murder everybody. But when you put these dangerous tools in people's hands and you don't have a clear direction of you don't speak the truth about what the history is, and you don't have clarity on, as Andreas mentioned, de-escalation. It's going really somewhere very bad. Just to speak for 1 second about the other issue, I feel like there's a lot to say about this, and I don't know if there'll be time later to comment more on the other one, um, on 9B, but if just to finish the sentence, I think that to start off with eliminating the statement that that human life is sanctity, that is a really bad place to start.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. I'll now move on to Barb Apple. You've been granted permission to speak. 3 minutes will now appear on the screen.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Barb Atwell. I'm a Berkeley resident and a member of the Berkeley Friends Meeting, otherwise known as Quakers. And I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that my friends have said via a letter to the board. So we, as Quakers, oppose the Kesarwani resolution to abolish this 2020 ban on tear gas, OC, and pepper spray. The proposed resolution cannot properly move forward as now written. These are important requirements of state law, not even mentioned in the resolution. There's specific language that would need to be adopted demonstrating advanced compliance in detail with the California law, AB 48 and with AB 481 before any of this resolution can legally be considered by the council. The requirements of AB 481 such as regarding the acquisition approval, the transparency, the accountability, and the use policy of chemical agents and impact projectiles. Those requirements plus AB 48, which has mandatory restrictions on the actual use to prevent illegal crowd control, these are required to be in place before we can decide whether to lift the existing ban. Before I go any further, I just want to say how much I appreciate the work of the Police Accountability Board and the Department of Police Accountability. You're doing great work. You're a role model for the rest of the nation. There's just some things that are not happening properly, and this does not meet the California legal requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to George Perez. Okay, 3 minutes are on screen.
Thank you and good evening, members of the PAB. First and foremost, thank you so much for your continued service to the city of Berkeley and for your continued commitment to the oversight of law enforcement. As I said before, my name is George Perez-Velez. I'm a longtime resident in the city of Berkeley. I want to echo the speakers that spoke before me, particularly Ms. Pritchett, who talked about the study. It is called the Berkeley Police Department Responses to the BML 2014 Demonstrations, a study or a report that I co-authored. So if you folks need access to it, I'll be more than happy to supply it. I do express some concerns related to the use of the word riot to classify the classification as a classification from demonstrations 2014, particularly since that word was not used by the Berkeley Police Department's own report or even by the PRC's report, and that use of the language was categorically condemned by the City Council from the dais. I also would recommend that you folks look at the end result of that study, which was the review of the crowd control, crowd management policy, which the City of Berkeley calls the First Amendment rights demonstrations policy. I look forward to your discussion on the item on the agenda, and thank you again for your time and your continued service. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 2 more speakers to chair. Ilana, you've been granted permission to speak. 3 minutes are now up.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Ilana Auerbach, and first I want to thank you so much for your service to our city, for being a leader, particularly the director, Hansel. I want to thank you for actually taking the role very seriously and holding the Berkeley Police Department chief, her feet to the fire with regard to getting the data that you are legally required to receive from them. So thank you. Thank you. And we need to continue, and we need to bolster and get even stronger and brighter and clearer right now, given what happened today and how we are moving towards a dystopian, a 1984 rewriting. I didn't even know about what was spoken about the riot, use of that language in Kesarwani's item. That is absurd, and we must it has to stop here, and Berkeley has to be a place where we actually walk our talk. And so we say no, they cannot have, no, you please, I beg you that you must recommend that they cannot have tear gas. They have not shown that they are even capable of de-escalating. You don't give someone a weapon when they have shown time and again so many examples. The Berkeley Cop Watch did a deep investigation, as did you all, about the texts, right? And so we know that there's very bad behavior and non-compliance of this department. So I want to urge you to be strong and be clear and speak the truth and do not and recommend against any, it's totally, it's illegal from what I've heard, as far as it's not following any of the protocol legally. And this is the absolute wrong moment. What we need to do is train, as was spoken, everyone in our community, including the cops, and first the cops, but everyone. How do we de-escalate and how do we come together? Because we need to come out in the streets, and we will be coming out in the streets, and there are people out in the streets right now. And that's to demand that we stand for human rights, and we stand for democracy, and we stand strong and courageous together as a community. And in solidarity, we can do that. And we need the Berkeley Police to be in solidarity with that vision of what we can create here in this country. And we need to stand up to the fascism and the spiraling towards martial law. So thank you for leading with the community in that vision. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are now going for our last speaker, Wendy Alton, who's been granted permission to speak. Just a moment while I get the timer up for you. There we go.
Thank you. Wendy Alton, also with Berkeley Friends Meeting, Berkeley resident. My first experience with unlawful use of force and tear gas was at San Francisco State more than 50 years ago. And again, the resolution doesn't see, that's proposed to council on number 9D, to dissolve the tear gas ban, doesn't recognize the circumstances. No, and I want to echo what all of the points that have been raised by all of the prior speakers. I really applaud you for being here and being committed to this work, and to hold up a clear mirror and provide guidance to council on what's required to make a policy. That you can't make a policy the way this is written is without having any recognition of the underlying state law requirements for using chemicals and pepper spray, without having any recognition that the use of force in crowd control is severely restricted and circumcised and has very precise types of requirements, and that all has to be in place in order to have a use policy. And if you do away with the ban, you're allowing use, and we're not supposed to allow use without a use policy. And anything that we can do to be helpful to all of you and to support your work in bringing this matter forward to council, I really would like to do. And likewise, we oppose the way the use of force policy amendments presented by the department. It lacks many of the same things, especially just starting with the removal of the introductory paragraphs. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. With that, we have no additional public comment. Chair, before we move on to the next item, I just want to acknowledge that Vice Chair Wilson's now here. It's great for the record. And with that, we conclude public comment.
Thank you everyone for your comment. With that, we'll move to agenda item 4, approval of the minutes for the special meeting of December 17th. Does anyone have any changes?
I can move.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Is that move to approve? No.
Is there any opposition to the motion to approve the special minutes of December 17th? Or any? Seeing or hearing none, the motion is carried.
Great. Let's go to agenda item 5, the output staff.
Good evening, Chair, board members, colleagues, members of the community. Happy New Year. Thank you for the information that we've provided so far, and thank you for the support from the community on staying aware of different issues that are impacting us in our community. I don't have any specific updates for the board at this time, but just a gentle reminder from last time that but there's an active request from the mayor's office in the budget committee to look at a reduction of 10% for city budgets. So our office is actively assessing where that could potentially be done. We are impacted by the current hiring freeze, so we're trying to navigate that and ensure that we're providing the services the charter wants us to. There are no current NACOL training updates. We'll keep you aware of that when they do become available. So Chair, I'll kick it back to you as the board if there are any questions right now.
Any questions for the director? None? Okay. You have any question?
No, I don't have a question. Is this a time where board members can make statements?
Next one.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Director. Go to agenda item 6, the chair and board member reports. Board member Calvita.
Oh,
No, I'll pass it to you.
okay. I was just gonna bring to everybody's attention that there's going to be a public conversation on January 15th, which is a Thursday at 3 o'clock at the police station downtown on the surveillance cameras and drones. That was brought to my attention just a couple of days ago, so I'm not sure that the public is aware of it, but I would encourage people to go to that discussion. So again, it's Thursday the 15th at 3 o'clock at the police station. Yeah.
Any other board member? I do not have any either, so with that, other than Happy New Year to everyone. And also, it was very sad to see what happened in Minneapolis. My heart goes out to them. Okay, let's go to agenda item 8, subcommittee reports.
We are on.
Oh, sorry, agenda item 7, chief police report. Sorry.
Good evening, board. As I said, unfortunately, the chief and deputy chief weren't able to make it, so they do send our apologies. So we just wanted to pass along a message to give a couple quick updates. First, the department has updated our fair and impartial policing policy and clearly now explicitly prohibits quotas, reinforcing our call for that bill and unbiased policing. So our commitment to that. So we want to update you on that. Additionally, I know board member Calvita brought it up. We wanted to make sure everyone is aware that we are hosting a community conversation on public safety technology next week. Discuss how those tools such as license plate readers, fixed cameras, drones, and community musicians help support public safety and our criminal investigations. The meeting will be in person and remotely. We hope that members of the board will join us, as well as the community. There will be a Zoom link provided as well, so people will be able to remote in. And then just for your awareness, following the community conversation, we expect to have a draft of the use and acquisition reports to share with you. And the city attorney's office for review, and we're using Alameda County Sheriff's Office policy the guide, which was developed in collaboration with civil liberties and private advocacy groups through their oversight process. So we hope to have that for you as well after that. And that is all we have.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report. I'm wondering if you, so the arrest port policy is embedded in the fair and impartial policing.
As far as my understanding, I haven't seen the specific draft, so that's what I mean, is with the update I was given is that it is now clearly explicitly prohibits quotas and it is in that policy.
Okay, I was gonna ask you if you're aware of, is this the language implicit or explicit quotes?
I do not know for sure, I can find out.
Anyone else?
What time was that hearing?
The
At
community
the
meeting
station?
is at 3 o'clock.
On what day?
Thursday, January 15th.
One quick question, Lieutenant, what, do you know the format for the community conversation, will members of the public be able to have public comment, or is it just as structured?
I know it's being stated as a conversation, I don't know, I can try and find out the SD back.
Like, just, we're probably gonna get questions, so.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I will try and find out for them as well, as you develop it.
I think there's a flyer.
Yeah, we do have physical flyers and we can distribute it and make it available after the meeting under the agenda materials page.
Okay. Acting lieutenant, is that right?
Provision.
Division lieutenant. Okay. Agenda item 8, subcommittee reports.
Okay, Chair. Thank you. I'll start with the reports on the list, which is on page 13 of the agenda packet. For any updates from the different subcommittees on their activities since the last PAB meeting on December 17th, starting with regulations.
We have had one meeting since then, and we will have 4 meetings this month. The first one being this Friday, and we have 2 in the middle of the month and 1 at the end of the month. And it's expected apparently that the internal aspect of this will be complete by the end of January, not the bargaining part, but the internal discussion. That's all I have.
Thank you. Policy review subcommittee, any activities since last meeting?
No, no update.
Okay, metrics and operations.
No update, other than that, I have made the amendments to the policy, what I'm calling the policy manual. That were discussed at the last meeting December that I was at, and I will be sending those out so that we can get it on the next agenda for review.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question, actually. This is a different topic, the budget, BPD budget in particular, but also the timeline for our submission of a budget. I think the staff team was gonna update us on those timelines. Do you have additional information on that?
Yes, so the most recent timelines, the budget and finance team is sort of consolidating all the different expected expenditures. The timeline for them to do that was actually going to be yesterday. We haven't gotten any additional information on that just yet, but we'll definitely send an update.
Okay.
Once we have a clear timeline for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, rules of metrics and operation. Or that's gonna miss it. Outreach and engagement. Chair Dyson.
No update from us.
Okay, arrest photo prohibition. We'll report to the local procedure, so I'll go ahead and skip that one. Policies and practices on the county clearances.
I don't have an update, but can I ask on arrest quotas, since that issue has been fully addressed now with the BPD's adoption of the modified policy, should we terminate that?
We could have a motion to.
Okay, maybe we'll wait till board member Wells is back. But, okay.
And, okay, so no update. Any updates from our liaisons on EIS or FRP since our last meeting?
No.
No.
And, on policy complaints, I know Gordon Raquel, we and I need to connect. But are there any updates since then?
No.
Okay. With that, Chair, that concludes the subcommittee report.
Okay, thanks for that. Now let's go to 9A. Nomination of candidates for the positions of chair and vice chair for 2026 calendar year. As outlined in section 1A and 1C of the standing rules of the Police Accountability Board. I will kick it to the director to explain the process.
You know, give it to our office, I'll give it to our policy analyst, or send Leo walk us through this.
So for members of the public, on page 20 of the agenda material, we have section I, which is the elections. In summary, or I'll read the relevant section. So section I1 states that elections shall be held during the second meeting of each year. During the board meeting preceding the election meeting, the nomination of the chair will precede the nomination of the vice chair, and the following nomination process will be followed for each office. The presiding chair will declare the nomination process open. A board member board member nominates another board member or themselves. A board member must be present in order to be nominated and may decline the nomination. The nomination is seconded. If there is no second, the nomination fails. So in today's meeting, we'll be going along with the nomination process. And at the second January meeting, for the current standing rule of the board is when we'll go to the official vote for each position. So at this meeting, we'll just be presenting nomination for the role of chair and vice chair. I know we've been asked about this. The only position that's limited by term limitations is the position of the chair, which can't serve more than 2 consecutive terms. But the vice chair position isn't restricted by that. So yes, so chair, if you're ready and you are ready to declare the nomination process.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
So what you just described is just for the chair. What about the vice chair?
In terms of the limit
No,
restrictions?
we nominate the chair and vice chair today.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because it only talks about the chair and the, what you read.
I think it says it precedes the nomination of vice chair on 1.
Okay.
Okay, well, unless there's any more questions, I'll declare the nomination process open.
Okay.
I have
So
I have a nomination.
yes.
I nominate our chair, Cayetano, to serve a second term.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Seeing no additional nominations, vice chair, we will proceed to vice chair nominees.
Okay. Vice chair nomination process is also open. I nominate Vice Chair Wilson.
Second that.
Any additional nominations? Okay. Seeing or hearing none, we'll bring these back to the next meeting. As a reminder, at the next meeting, you're also allowed to make a last minute nomination. But this is just preliminary list, which we'll make available ahead of the meeting and the minutes. Okay, Chair, with that, we conclude the nomination process.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It was exhilarating, and thank you for the nomination. I appreciate it. Let's go to 9B, discussion and action on annual review of use of force policy to reflect developing practices and procedures per SB 230 and BPD policy 300.13. I put this on the agenda, but I asked the director to prepare a report. Is your office ready to present some on the item?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
Just a gentle reminder of the use of force policy, 300, it required an annual review. So for the last few meetings for members of the board, and members of the public rather, we've been discussing the use of force policy. At the last meeting, the police department, provided a version of some changes that they would like to implement. And the chair, as noted, he asked us to look a little bit more on the history of this. I'm going to turn it over to our policy analyst, Leo, to walk us through the memo we prepared today.
And I'm sorry, before you do that, just because I kind of got a little bit lost in this material, when did the department submit its most recent proposed revisions to us?
Right before I left.
Oh, when I wasn't here.
Yeah.
Okay, and where is that in the item?
Their proposed revisions?
Uh-huh.
I don't know if it's in this item.
It's not in this packet, it was in last week's packet.
Okay, so that's kind of,
I'm sorry.
So just a note for staff, yeah, that would have been helpful to include, because we've got like two different versions of the policy in the packet. But neither of them is what is being proposed by the department currently. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just an overview, and for members of the public, the memorandum that the board has in front of them is on page 24 of the regular meeting material. So the original use of force policy, as we know now in the Let's Pull format, was a response to an initial council referral from October 31st, 2017, which directed the city manager's office to amend the use of force policy, which then was General Order U2. There were several months of work from the PRC with the PRC and BPD to co-develop this new policy, which was ultimately presented back in July 23rd, 2020. There were several versions of the policy that were presented. The first being the PRC's adopted proposed language, followed by then Council Member Harrison's revision of the PRC's version, which was ultimately the one that was considered with a few revisions. Those revisions were primarily, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit. The proposed policy that was ultimately voted on is on page 30 of the agenda material. The policy that's noted there is ultimately what was passed with the revisions located on page 25 of the packet, which were three sections that were amended on the dais before final approval, which was section 300.1. 300.4, and 300.6. And that was a policy that was adopted in the last April. So for open questions, that's the brief overview of the version response to the chair's request for just a brief background of the use of force policy and the initial adoption.
Okay, thanks, Jose. Open it to questions, initial questions, and then comments.
I was confused by the summary of how things happened at that time, because I was under the impression that the policy that was passed was the policy that was worked out within the PRC in collaboration with the department. I wasn't aware that there was a separate proposal by Councilmember Harrison. Was it different, very different from ours?
It wasn't drastically different. There were a few grammatical changes that were placed and a few additional sentences. In my review, it was majority the same than what was proposed with the
Okay,
PRC.
so it was just some tweaks.
Yes.
I see, okay. Yeah.
My question is, so we're obligated to do an annual review. And the director made some proposals a few meetings ago, and then we were presented with the incredibly draconian changes proposed by the department. And so I'm not clear about how those two things correlate, because I mean, it seems to me that our review now isn't just of the existing policy, because now we're faced with responding to the department's proposal.
And has the department completed its proposed revision?
No, that was a question that I had actually. I don't know, Lieutenant, if you know.
Well, they presented it as a draft. They presented it as a draft that they would collaborate with us on reviewing, or, you know, but it was a radical change from the original policy with red lines throughout. And lots of things deleted entirely. And it's unclear to me at this point what it is. It kind of left me unclear as to what we can do at this point. I mean, I would reject these radical deletions and changes altogether. I mean, I would replace the sanctity of life statement at the beginning. I would replace the discussions of de-escalation. There's a lot of things that I would change about their changes. But it was so radical, I don't see how we can collaborate and come to any conclusion within the next few months. That's, I mean, given everything else that's on our plate, but I, for one, would reject their changes.
We should find out a timeline from the department. So that we do have an opportunity to at least attempt to have a meaningful discussion with them. And I don't think we were given any sense of it.
So I think we have a few options. One is we asked the department to come to us with their final version of the draft, then submit it to us so that we can provide our feedback. The second option is they asked us to engage in a policy committee and to take up what is an unfinished draft and to speak with them about it. And the third is really to do nothing. I think those are the three options we have right now. In terms of what happened at the last meeting, I mean, I had a meeting with Chief Lewis and Deputy Chief Tate a couple weeks before our meeting, and I asked them to present any changes that have been made to the use of force policy or any proposed changes that they we're planning on making. And they didn't tell me at the time what proposed changes they were planning on making, but that was why we had the meeting December 17th, the presentation. So, I mean, one thing that I'm worried about is if we say no, if we don't engage with them, I think that they will just submit it to the council.
No, we should engage.
And the council will agree.
Yeah.
So the question is just how, really. I don't think the third option of doing nothing is a good option. Excuse me. I told them at the last meeting that the council had voted on the policy such that they can't change it unilaterally. And I think that the history that the director's office put together makes that clear, that the policy that we have is what the council voted on. So I think there's still some questions there as well, but maybe your best option is to ask them when they plan on finishing their version of the policy so that they can send it to us. That would be my suggestion.
Or request that we be given ample opportunity to work with them.
Well, I thought they offered to set up a committee with us.
They did, but they said it wasn't finished yet.
Yeah, I'm just looking at this presentation, I guess, that you guys went over at the meeting on the 17th. Yeah, from them. Because it does explain the changes. Well, I would just say for my part, I'm willing to participate in like a smaller committee to focus on this. When the time is appropriate, if that's something that would be helpful to the PAB. I don't have all the history on it, but I'm willing to kind of dig in and work on it. It sounds like it's immature at this juncture, but just putting that out there.
We can ask them for a definitive answer on the next meeting. When they plan on finishing.
Definitive answer about what?
When they plan on finishing.
I didn't understand that what they presented to us was not their final, it said draft, but I thought that it was a draft because then we were going to respond. That's
Yeah,
not
I
their.
got the sense too that
I thought
that's
it was their
what they-
final draft, but it was a draft because, did they tell you it was not finished on their end?
Well, it says in the presentation that the changes are in progress. It kind of says it's still, they're still working on it.
I think it was ambiguous, but one thing that I had a lot of conversations with members of the community this last weekend who were involved in the initial drafting process, and there was like many years of negotiations with the committees, both with the department and with us, and a referral from the council, and then the mayor's working group. All of that went into the current policy that we now have. And so I think any committee that we put together, we need to really grapple with what I thought was a very reasoned process the first time around so that we don't shortcut or lose sight of that this time around.
And my guess, although I'm not sure, is that they want to use the lexible language, which is in the past, we had, in the PRC, we had a lexical committee, and we carefully looked at all the standard lexical policies and converted Berkeley's version of those policies. And historically, Berkeley's policies are much more progressive, and the lexical policies are very bare bones and not something that's really suitable for Berkeley. So we tailored them. And again, I haven't looked at it, but my guess is by crossing out all the language that we carefully included, none of that would have been in a lexical policy. So
I did look at it and I agree, but you can talk. Okay, so I don't think there's any action.
Well, I think we're asking staff, right, to follow up with the department and
Sure.
get a sense of if in fact we do have a final draft, if not, when are we gonna get it? And to, I guess, get some more information about the idea for this joint committee or working group.
And unlike other things on our plate, there's no deadline or timeline for this, so there's no urgency, right?
well, let's find out. I mean, because under the charter, they just have to, department has to provide us with a policy 30 days after implementation, right?
sure.
So we're asking for something much different than that. We want to have an opportunity to collaborate with them way in advance of it being implemented.
I mean, basically, we want to talk to them before they submit it to council. Yes, we should let it happen. Are there any other comments? Just want to make sure everyone. Okay. Without any other comments, I think that we don't need a motion for that, right, Director? We're just going. Have you reach out for us?
Well,
I don't think we need a motion.
It's just to find out the status, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And in the meantime, I would encourage all the board members to. Well, could you also put together those different versions of the drafts into a packet?
You can do that.
Okay. Thank you. So you can read them. And okay, with that, let's go to 9C, discussion action on the preparation of the annual report. 9C1. Director?
Yes. I would like to ask our data analyst, step in here. He assisted in preparing this, but it's just as a general overview. We just finished the presentation a few months back for the 2024 report. We just completed calendar year 2025. One of the things that was expressed was the interest to ensure that we get it to council and get it to your hands, get it to council's hands earlier than we did last year. So we're putting forth what we think is the pathway to get it there. It is gonna require a lot of prioritization on this on our end. We're gonna make sure we try to balance it with our other duties as an office. But I'll go ahead and turn it over just quickly for our data analyst. Saeed, and he just quickly just summarize the information provided to the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty similar to what we did for our last year report, but the outline and the framework. We did incorporate feedback we received from the council during our presentation to make sure that some points they noted, such as benchmarking, just the metrics that they're similar, and also emerging technologies being another section that we're kind of reporting on. So overall, our framework, it's aligned with the feedback that we've received. from yourself and council, and additionally, we're open to adjust if there isn't more feedback, but that was the process for this.
And we have also begun, we had conversations about research of the data. We've met again in terms of division of labor within our office, making sure that we got the complaint data correct, but also the stat data, and that we're all able to match some of the analysis the department did, like Bella Darkness, and be able to contribute in that way as well.
Any questions from board? Thank you, by the way.
My comment is just, I think the timeline is very aggressive. Do you guys really feel like you can do that?
So I think there's gonna have to be synergy between our bodies if this is a timeline that we want to stick to. That we were going to potentially have to be able to step away from other support of the board to do this. Sometimes we do get just ad hoc requests, and then, and they might be more, or they might be time sensitive as well. So we just have to talk about a way to have synergy if this is the plan. If there's a more I think or a different version of this, we're open to it. We were trying to get to I think the chair's also commitment to get it to council around this time frame, so.
And remind me, when does the department submit theirs?
March or usually.
Okay. Part of why I think the timeline is aggressive is because of something that I don't exactly see addressed here, which is the feedback that we heard from council about the need to better align the metrics being used for our report and the department's report around the stock data in particular. Because in order to do that, I'm assuming there needs to be some legwork by our staff and meeting with the department to say, okay, we agree we're gonna, I don't know, use these metrics, and in some areas we're gonna diverge, but we're gonna explain why we're doing something different than what the department does. All of that will take a bit of time. So is it contemplated, that kind of dialogue with the department to try to address that particular set of feedback that we got?
I guess that this other element of this, working with that stakeholder, to ensure, informing them of what our timeline is, and seeing where they are with their bandwidth, and they can designate somebody, or they can say, no, and they have at times informed us, and we're looking to try to finish it by such date. And they might say, right now, we have a lot of priorities that's not gonna be accomplishable, how about this? So we can see where they are.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it would be important, since we got so much feedback on this report, to try to reflect an incorporation of the feedback and what we submit next time. And again, I'm not saying we just have to wholesale adopt the department's metrics, but we need to explain, where we are and aren't and why, right? So I guess I would like to give you more leeway. I think this is too soon, given some of the work that I think we need to do. So that's my feedback on this. I don't know, I'm looking at notes, not the item. Are you asking us to vote on this, or is this just informational?
At this time, we were providing the outline, but if there is a definitive stance right now, whether this is not gonna be accomplishable, or if you'd like us to do a revised timeline and provide some guidance to us, and we're happy to do that. terms of when, like, when you quarter two, quarter three, obviously, we don't wanna wait till the end of the year again, but we're happy to revisit this.
I have a question. So this says January this month, that you draft the narrative sections and then the board reviews them next month. Does that seem realistic now that we're already in January?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, we're following the charter framework, so, I think this is where, historically, there's been some, the co-authorship piece, I think is helpful, the earlier we can get something to your hand, so we can find out how to modify it, but I think once we get our data pool, we can start seeing what the story is, and part of our story from the office perspective is talking about the impacts of the hiring freeze. So that's already built in as part of the narrative that come out of this report, so I believe it is realistic.
I think since we're not voting on it, we're just giving you feedback. You've heard my feedback. I just want to make sure you have sufficient time to at least have a couple of conversations with the department, really looking at that stock data. The veil of darkness test, right? We're using different tests and different measures, and I think council found that challenging. So I'd like to give you enough time to have a few conversations. So I'm not personally wedded to the end of March. I'm okay with it going into quarter two. Obviously, we want it to be done earlier than last year, right? But
yeah, I think the other key thing is how this relates to budget conversations. So we have to make sure that council understands impacts and the work that we're doing. So yeah, definitely we can go past quarter one, go into quarter two, but also make sure that they have in their hands while they're able to assess the budgets and where they're gonna readjust as well.
okay.
The only other thing I'm thinking is would it be helpful to, if the department's report is due around the same time, for us to have theirs?
Yeah,
They submitted to us 30 days.
Right, but I thought that we were saying that theirs is due in March also. Oh, okay, so we would have seen it, we would have seen it.
I think, the vice chair and I were talking about a retreat that's coming up in
10 days.
in 10 days. And we could talk there about our recommendations after reflecting on this last year about our recommendations that can go into the annual report. So if you have any thoughts, if the board has any thoughts on that, 10 days from now would be a good time to discuss that one. Okay. Well, proficient conversation there, director?
yes.
Great. That let's go to 9D, discussion action on the proposed resolution to amend City Council's 2020 direction to reinstate BPD's use of flue gas in limited situations and lift the COVID-19 moratorium on use of smoke and OC spray. Records.
Yeah, so this item, we are part of our routine duties as an office to support you is to track items of interest for the board. And we noticed that this particular item was placed on to be heard in the first meeting back of council. The agenda rules committee met and they decided to make a referral to the public safety committee. I'm going to allow our policy analysts to give a little bit more background on this item and where it stands now.
Thank you, Director. As Director noted, item will be going to the policy committee or the public safety policy committee. So it won't be on the January 20th council consent calendar as it was originally proposed. But as it's noted on the item and as a few of our speakers noted during the public comment section, so the original restriction or the original ban was set into place on June 9th, 2020. And it was a co-authored proposal by then Mayor Ida Gain, Councilmember Harrison and Councilmember Robinson, to prohibit the use of chemical agents for crowd control during the COVID-19 pandemic. It did set a specific timeline, even though that was sort of the original introduction, as to when that prohibition would end or when it would lapse. It was set to council's discretion as to when they would do so. And that's what we have on our current proposal from our preliminary review of the item. We got notice of it last Thursday, so we've only had a couple of days to fully review it and had a way to call the Agenda Rules Committee to see what the next step was going to be to inform the board. If I pull up my calendar, I'd let you know the next public safety meeting this month. So the next public safety committee meeting is going to be on January 29th. At 2 p.m. So that's when we would have a better sense of what the timeline is. There was a few additional items that committee was taking up, so we're not sure as to what scale or what priority this particular item would be for that committee. But in terms of next steps, and one of the questions we've gotten since we sort of provided this update was that to figure out whether there were previous conversations before 2020 on the use of CS gas, pepper spray, and all the other sort of equipment that falls into the chemical agents for crowd control. We haven't taken a deep dive yet into all of the PRC records. We know crowd control, for example, has been a topic that was covered by the PRC during different times. Our records show that there's policy committees on it back in the 90s, early 2000s, and there's a lot more that we have. So there's still some work in terms of just making sure that we cover all the historical context for it.
Do we know what state law there's reference in the resolution to wanting to align Berkeley with state law? I looked, it looks like it's Penal Code 13652. I looked it up just quickly, and it sounds like it has to do with reporting requirements, but are you familiar with what state law says?
I'm not familiar with the exact language. AB 48 and AB 481 do classify certain gases as military equipment, which has its own sort of set of requirements for it. In terms of what the resolution was specifically referring to, we don't know some specifics, but
because the resolution says that in light of changes to state law, that's one of the reasons, rationales for this. And then the resolution language itself references Penal Code Section 13652. So it'd be obviously very helpful for us to have a good understanding of what state law says.
I believe the state laws they're referring to are AB 48 and 481.
Those codified in that.
Yes, but it's an interesting reference to those state laws because those state laws were motivated by a desire to restrict the use of chemical agents. It makes it sound here as if somehow it expanded the possibility of using these agents. In fact, those laws were promoted for the purpose of restricting chemical agent use to when there was a danger of death or serious bodily injury. There's a whole list of bullet points as to when they could be used as opposed to when they could not be used. And so I found it a very unusual use of this reference since those laws in fact were designed to restrict the use of those agents.
And just one other thing, do we know what NACOL says on this topic? Because I know we're often looking to NACOL for policy guidance.
Director, is it to your immediate knowledge that NACOL has a timeline on this?
I would have to look at that. I don't, let this come to mind immediately.
I didn't look up the statutes, but I remember in the Citygate report, that there was a section on sort of onerous reporting requirements for BPD as compared to comparative policing agencies. And one of them was on use of force reporting. And in that Citygate report, there was this sort of section that said, or one of the recommendations was to align Berkeley's use of force reporting with other jurisdictions, and I believe state law, meaning our current reporting requirements are in excess of state law. So again, I haven't looked at so I don't know if that's what part of this is.
This isn't about reporting, this is about the use.
Yeah,
of
it's about the
gas.
use, but I don't know.
I
Specifically.
think state law does have reporting requirements though.
It does, but the resolution that she's putting forward is about lifting the ban on
Right,
TVs.
right.
It's not
Okay,
about.
I'm getting two issues confused. Can I ask a question then? So there's currently a ban. The ban was put in place during the early days of the pandemic. The proposal is to rescind the ban with respect to two items, or send it all together, right? And to modify the ban with respect to tear gas. So it's to go back to a status quo that was in place prior to the pandemic. I just want to clarify that. Okay, so, all right.
And yes, it was during the pandemic, but it was also during a period of police reform in general. It was a different period, it was a different council. But you know, at the time that this came up, I and others, much more than I, but did a little bit of research on the health impacts of tear gas. And the thing about COVID, the thing about it happening when there was the peak of COVID, not that it's gone away, is that COVID raised awareness of respiratory issues and the dangers of tear gas to public health. That hasn't gone away. The fact that it happened through COVID, you know, it's not as if a lot of people with COVID were out there in the public demonstrating and getting tear gassed, but I think the larger point is that it raised awareness about respiratory issues and the dangers of tear gas. And to my mind, that's still a valid point that we should consider. So, you know, I'm not sure what motivates this at this particular time. I notice in the description that in 40 years, it's been used 3 times, which it seems to me is a good argument for why we don't need it. Because extractions and other potentially dangerous situations have been dealt with in other ways. So.
The other comment I wanted to make about the reference to state law is always the floor, not the ceiling. So Berkeley's policies generally go way beyond the minimum requirements of state law. So if there's something in state law that is inconsistent in that our policy would be violating state law, certainly we need to change it. But we don't need to change, Berkeley doesn't need to change its policy simply because state law has lower requirements.
It's often been our intent to do that. Yeah. I would hate to see that lost. But our opinion has not been solicited, I guess, on this. I don't know.
Well, so do we know when the Public Safety Committee meeting is?
January 29th, I think.
That's correct, January.
So my recommendation would be to have someone on the board or the board or the director's office draft a letter to the Public Safety Committee from the PAB. Then we can submit it to them at after our next meeting, before their meeting. That would be my recommendation, but I don't know if we need to come to a more like consensus. It sounds like there is. Well, I want to say consensus for that. I'm not sure. I don't know exactly the position that the board wants to take, but to me it sounds like an opposition to the resolution. Although I haven't heard from everyone, so I'm not exactly sure.
I just think we need more information, at least I personally would like to hear more about NACOL or other if there are certain restrictions, you know. Possibly if there were a policy that were very restrictive, we might be okay with it, but you know, that's not what they're proposing, so.
I guess I have a slightly different, I have a hard time with opposing rescission of something that was implemented. The way I'm reading it was implemented in the early stages of the pandemic.
That was only half the rationale. That was part of it. And she mentions that in the resolution, there were two reasons for it.
Mm-hmm. And this is not proposing to implement it exactly as it was, but in a less restrictive, I mean, a more restrictive manner than it was.
It's not
With
clear.
respect to tier,
It's not.
No, it's not clear, because I mean, we only have a resolution here. I assume that if this were to pass council, then it would have to go back to, because this isn't a policy, it would have to go to the department to generate the policy, which would have to incorporate, I assume, the restrictions in AB 48 and 481.
But I thought in the staff memo, it said, that tear gas would not be authorized to be used, for crowd control.
But smoke and pepper spray.
Yeah, but in the past, tear gas, smoke, and pepper spray could be used for crowd control. So this proposal is more restrictive than what was in place in 2020.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I guess I'm just offering a different perspective that I'm having a different view that this is going back to something that was in place, and in fact, it's more restrictive than what was in place. So I'm not saying we shouldn't weigh in on it, but I'm not taking this position like this is some crazy thing the department or council might do. I guess my view.
One question that I had for, I wish I could ask council member this question is, what is the impetus behind changing it if what the policies that we have in place, there's been not an acute need to use tear gas in situations or OC spray or smoke. I think there have been situations in Berkeley since 2020 protests, and also sort of like those armed suspect incidents where the department has been able to subdue that person with that incident, and also, without having to risk the indiscriminate use of force against others. So that's sort of like my question is like, well, it's not like there's a very acute need here that needs to be addressed, and so it seems to me to be a loosening of restrictions without purpose. That's sort of I didn't see a particular rationale other than things that were also made in 2020.
Right, but wouldn't it be just the fact, I know it was only part of it, the fact that part of the rationale was it was COVID-19. And, the seriousness of that, of the pandemic has been reduced.
Right, but if there's been no negative consequences to the change, why increase the risk of introducing these back into
Right, I'm just saying, like, it was clear from the beginning that it was temporary, and part of it was because of that. And that's gone away, and that was the mitigating factor, so. I mean, I hear what you're saying too, which is just like, haven't been used, we're not seeing problems, so.
I don't know, and I'm not sure if it was meant to be temporary, like they could have put a sunset date on it. They could have said.
How could you put a sunset date on at the beginning of the pandemic?
You can, when the state of emergency is over, you can list the moratorium. That's how moratoriums usually work.
Yeah, but it lasted like 3 to 5 years, and all jurisdictions all did it till the. I don't think in those early stages they're gonna put an expiration date on it.
They wouldn't put a date, they would say into the state of emergencies. They would.
You know, the COVID is emphasized in this resolution and this discussion. But at the time, that was not the only, not even the primary reason for it. It was a period of police reform. People had been injured previously when it had been used. It's a danger to respiratory health. And people found it to be sound policy. And therefore, you know, the fact that COVID is being emphasized here, Councilmember Kesarwani was opposed to the ban when it was voted on back in 2020. So, I don't know exactly what motivates it this particular moment, but the danger to public health remains. And I agree with the chair that it hasn't been de-escalation techniques have been used. So therefore, I'm not sure what the incentive is for it. But
I do understand though that you could draft a policy that says under certain exigent circumstances, they talk about a hostage situation or something.
Yeah.
Well, I could see that might be
right,
reasonable if it were so narrowly drafted.
right.
But we haven't heard that there have been hostage situations where they would have liked that, right? I mean, that's why I agree that it would be nice to know what is motivating this at this particular time.
The resolution is rather generous, and in fact, it says where there's a significant threat to public safety, that could provide a lot of discretion.
Right.
It's not, the policy will have to be consistent with AB 48. And which talks about death or serious bodily injury and other things. Anyway, we could talk about this for a long time. Guess we need to decide what it is that's needed from us. I feel strongly about this. And others,
Procedurally, it sounds like it's gonna get voted on, and then as you mentioned, Board Member Calvita, it's gonna go back to the department to drop the policy that would then come to us.
That would be only after the council has directed.
Right. So we would have an opportunity to weigh in on the actual policy.
Yeah, but that's after the council has decided that the policy should be created.
Yeah.
in other words, the ban would have been lifted by then. Yeah.
So I guess for my 2 cents, I just believe that we need to start being a little bit more strategic about the issues that we are saying are critically important and where we're like laying down the gauntlet. Because we keep losing, for lack of a better term. So I don't think our strategy's been that effective. And so I feel like just today, we've talked about a number of things, and there's a lot of concern about the changes to use of force policy, this and that. We're gonna talk about some more. So I don't feel like it benefits us to kind of always be in that zone with the department or with the council. So for me, this is not one where I would really want to invest a lot of energy in trying to get council not to take this action. I am comfortable with us sending a short letter that says, we don't know what the motivation is. It hasn't been in the last 5 years. It doesn't seem to have been an issue. Our preference is that it stays rescinded. If you are gonna go forward, we look forward to weighing in on the policy. I mean, that's what I would be comfortable with.
I agree with that and say that we, could possibly support a very narrowly tailored policy.
I think that we should have the next meeting, Vice Chair, if you're willing to write a draft letter. I will also write a separate draft letter and we'll have to propose both of them and vote on it. Because I'm not sure where I stand, and I want to be able to submit something before the Public Safety Committee meeting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
When is the Public Safety Committee meeting?
The 29th. The 29th.
And what would your proposed letter say?
I have to do the research that you were talking about other jurisdictions.
Yeah, that would be very helpful for us to guide our analysis.
But it sounds like, it sounds to me like there are two slightly different views, and I want to be able to have a fully drafted position so that we could vote on it, and discuss it more at our next meeting, if that works. Cause I don't think we're gonna be able to decide it today.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, that sounds, I think we're gonna have to do that at the next meeting, but it will be a good discussion. Are there any other comments before I move on? Okay. So I'm just keeping it quickly. Okay, sorry, agenda item 10, public comment.
Okay, as a reminder, speakers are generally allotted 3 minutes, maybe a lot less time if there are any speakers. They may comment on any matter within the board jurisdiction at the time, except for personnel matters. Seeing that there is no physically present speakers, I'll move on to our virtual meetings. Okay, I see one hand raised at the moment. John Lee Cole, you've been granted permission to speak. 3 minutes are on screen.
Great, thank you so much. I think you've met me before. I work for the American Friends Service Committee. We monitor implementation of AB 41 and have also studied considerably AB 48. So on this last item that you just discussed, I think it is important to note that the memo made reference to AB 48, which is the state law 13652. That board member Leftwich referenced. And that law refers to, it restricts the use of tear gas in crowd control. So if the proposal is to exclude all uses of chemical agents in crowd control, it would be entirely consistent with that state law. But I also noted that the proposal at one point said would be excluded in unrest, and another point it said crowd control. And those are different. Crowd control could be a protest. It could be that is not unrest. So I think, what the actual policy is going to be is extremely relevant. And so seeing what is, I think saying we need the council to bring this back, we need the department to bring this back is crucial, because that brings me to AB 41, which is not referenced at all here, and which the department has been in general not very good at faithfully implementing. And AB 41 requires a policy with a number of different elements and reporting on that policy. And I think so that's the piece, and it also requires an independent entity that monitors implementation, which logically would be the PAB. One of the things that strikes me the most about this meeting this evening, and I guess a lot of your meetings, is that there's no representative of the department present. So it becomes an empty conversation of this board. I really appreciate what you're doing. And at the same time, without the space in which you can actually dialogue in an ongoing way, without lots of formality and so on with members of the department about these issues, you are in a very difficult situation. So I think insisting that this comes back to the board and that the department present it to the PAB is a crucial thing going forward. There's more I could say. I would be very happy to collaborate with Chair Cayetano and others on the board on this issue, and I will reach out to you afterwards. So thanks so much. Hope you have a good evening.
Thank you. With that said, Chair, we have no additional hands raised.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you being here. With that, we will move on to closed session, agenda item 11. Thank you all.
Public audio visual recording will stop. You may remain in the webinar, but get audio visual recording.
Agenda item 12. Announcement of closed session actions. The board approved the director's proposal recommendations for blood finding. And we also authorized the director to enter into a contract with a law firm on behalf of the police accountability board. And with that, we'll move to agenda item 13. Adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great, thank you.